And thank you, Teresa, for inviting me back to speak with you all. Really, I look forward to when we can all safely meet in person again.
Yes.
So it was almost a year ago, it was March of 2020, when we had to do a 360-degree pivot and move our entire office to work remotely. And I can assure you that during this pandemic, the Public Defender's Office, we have continued to serve our clients and the public. We have been handling court remotely and handling hearings remotely. We have not had any kind of jury trials or grand juries or in-person hearings yet in DeKalb County, although we anticipate that hopefully they will be starting in a couple of months as numbers continue to decrease and more vaccinations become available. But in 2020, even during a pandemic, we represented clients at over 10,000 hearings. We had instituted a lot of training programs internally to learn how we can advocate for our clients in Zoom court and how we can sustain a client-centered practice remotely. In the first month of the pandemic, we successfully advocated for the release of almost 300 clients. So we were able to reduce the jail population by about 20% in DeKalb County, which obviously is helpful to protecting the safety and welfare of everybody. We also kind of addressing what we had worked on back in 2018, Teresa, with the misdemeanor bail reform. Because of the pandemic, there was also an expansion of that order, which is something that we had hoped for at the very beginning. But I was grateful to see that happen. Silver lining with the pandemic, that most misdemeanors, most traffic offenses in DeKalb County now are receiving signature bonds. So we have very few clients that we're seeing in custody on misdemeanors. And when we do, we're advocating, we're bringing them to court, even though it's Zoom court, advocating to seek their release. And really, we have very few misdemeanor clients that are in jail at this time. So we also, even though it was a huge challenge last year in 2020, we also successfully connected many of our clients with the services they need: work, housing, mental health, substance use issues. Many of the programs in our community partners were not accepting new participants because of the pandemic, but gradually many of them reopened and then closed and reopened as different public health events happened, but we were able to connect many of our clients with the services that they desperately needed. The backlog is going to be huge. The backlog is huge in DeKalb County because we have not had jury trials or in-person hearings. It will take several years. My prediction is to really work through a lot of these cases. So part of what we're doing to help that process is engaging in conversations with the prosecutors about taking a look and reassessing how do we prosecute cases. Does this case actually need to be prosecuted? Is it a public safety issue or is it not? Can this case be diverted? Can we expand the diversion programs? So throughout this pandemic and even into 2021, we are having those conversations to see what can we do and how do we prosecute cases. So we're working with both the solicitor as well as the DA to come up with perhaps some ideas to address that backlog, because we are not going to be able to try our way out of the backlog or prosecute our way out of the backlog. So one of the things that I'm also very proud of and very grateful to be working in DeKalb County is that as soon as the pandemic began, we formed a COVID task force of all the justice stakeholders, which includes my office, Public Defender Office, DA, Solicitor, the Clerk of Court for both State Court as well as Superior Court, the administration, Sheriff, and all the Chief Judges for Superior, State, Traffic, Juvenile, Probate, and Magistrate Court. And for over 9 months, we met every 2 weeks. We met every 2 weeks to talk about how and what we need to do to make sure that the courts are still accessible for people who needed the courts, how, and keeping in mind the due process and the constitutional rights of those accused, and how will we be able to make sure that those principles are still respected and adhered to, and how do we keep safe not only the public, but employees, the many employees that work in all these different court branches and justice stakeholder offices. So that kind of collaboration I can share with you is fairly rare in the state. When I met with my other colleagues in other jurisdictions around the state, that was not routinely happening. And that happened immediately the end of March of 2020. And so we broke down committees and we were able to address some really challenging but important issues that the courts and the justice system had to address. So I'm just very proud of that collaboration. And I really think it speaks well of DeKalb County and what we have. And I want to address the other program that Teresa mentioned that I'm really excited about and very proud to have been involved in, and that was our pretrial justice division. So this started about 2 years ago in 2019, and it was really made possible by the generous support of the Board of Commissioners and the administration to fund the pretrial justice division. And it started with a collaboration between my office, the DA's office, the magistrate court, the clerk of court, as well as the police and the sheriff. And we collaborated on this initiative. And basically what the initiative is that there are defense lawyers from my office as well as DAs representing clients at felony first appearance hearings. And we work 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, as well as holidays. And we are representing felony people who have been arrested for felony charges in DeKalb County. We are usually seeing them and representing them within 24 hours of their arrest. You know, we all know how devastating just even one day in jail can be for the person, for their children, for their job, for their housing, for their families. And so a goal of this particular initiative was to be very zealous in trying to get people released from jail. It was also, what's really unique about this program is that we received generous funding from the Board of Commissioners to include social workers in my office to add to our social worker team. So we have dedicated social workers that immediately work with our clients who have just been arrested to try to connect them with the services they need, so that our eventual goal is that they never come back to the criminal system again, and that we reduce that recidivism rate by providing people the support and the services they need not to return to the system. So it has been very successful. It's been a lot of hard work. As you might imagine, 6 days a week and holidays, but I'm so proud of the team that I have working with me, their commitment and their dedication to having this program and making sure that people receive that representation as soon as they are arrested, so that we can really try to help keep intact people and their families. So over the last 2 years, we've represented people in over 8,000 first appearance hearings. We've had over 1,000 referrals to our social worker team who have worked with different community partners to try to provide that kind of stability and that help. We have also, another big goal of this program is to refer more people to the accountability courts that we have in DeKalb County, to refer people to diversion instead of them waiting months and months in jail. Let's get them into the treatment courts that we have in DeKalb, or let's put them in the diversion program so that they don't have a conviction, and it just helps obviously enormously with their life. So I'm very proud of that initiative. And again, it would not have happened without the generous support of the Board of Commissioners, who obviously believed that this was an important initiative to bring to DeKalb County. And again, it's been very successful. 2020 will always have an asterisk by it when it comes to data. And, like it'll be a little bit of an anomaly. And it was an interesting year that we had in 2020, but we continued. One thing that didn't stop was representing people at their first appearance hearings. I can say, and I really do hope for all of you, and I hope, Teresa, thank you for mentioning it, this is also an initiative we hope to bring to misdemeanors, for people arrested on misdemeanors. We had approached the Board of Commissioners about this, about expanding it. It will take some funding for for the solicitor, for my office, for magistrate court. And we were not able to get that funding in 2020, but it is still something that we hope to pursue, and hope that we will be able to expand it into the misdemeanor world as well. One thing that I did want to address with this group is a new initiative, which I'm hoping to bring to DeKalb County again. So an interesting fact that happened over the pandemic is that we saw in the DeKalb County Juvenile Court a 53% reduction in juvenile delinquency cases. So the correlation, we believe, why we saw such a decrease in juvenile delinquency cases is because schools were not in session in person. Most of the schools for most of the year, beginning in March, went remote, and they were not having in-person learning. So it is something very troubling to think that so many of our juvenile delinquency cases are coming from the schools. So if there was any doubt anyone had of that school to prison pipeline, it is real. And I think the data that we were able to observe in juvenile delinquency cases in 2020 due to the pandemic gives us reason to think about what can we do to make sure we keep those numbers down in our school. So what I am trying to propose to the different organizations is that we have a school justice partnership. And as a matter of fact, I have a meeting tomorrow, a Zoom meeting scheduled with DA Boston and Chief Judge Crawford. He's the Chief Judge of the Juvenile Court, for me to present this idea to them, and one that I hope that they will be supportive of. And then our next step would be to go to the schools to try to get their support. But what a school justice partnership looks like is, instead of children immediately, if they committed usually what is considered a misdemeanor offense at school, a simple battery, a simple assault, a minor theft, disorderly conduct, fighting, disrupting the school, instead of automatically sending them into the court system for a delinquency matter and treating it as a criminal matter, we keep it in the schools. We partner with different community programs, and we treat it more as a behavioral issue rather than a criminal issue. And so the large goal of this is really to not criminalize what is normal adolescent behavior. I can share with you all, we have represented people in juvenile court charged with a delinquency offense who were accused of pulling someone else's hair at school, who was accused of goofing off on the treadmill and damaged a school wall, who was accused of taking a chicken nugget off of another person's plate. And so my goal for this school justice partnership is to let's all get together, the schools, the justice system, community organizations and partners, and let's work at addressing, what is behavioral and shouldn't be criminal. There would be graduated sanctions for the child, and only after maybe the third time, then it goes to the court system. This would not, if there are weapons or any kind of violent offense, this doesn't impact that. This is dealing more with those disruptive, almost more behavioral issues that we frequently see in adolescents. So that's my big goal for 2021. I'm hoping that we'll be able to get the support, especially since I anticipate schools will be resuming in-person teaching come August. And so wish me luck, and hopefully it's something that I think that we can bring. I think it would be incredible and so very much needed in DeKalb County, and will just really help our children stay out of the legal system and interrupt and disrupt that school to prison pipeline. So that's one of my big goals for 2021, to try to work on that. In the meantime, we continue to fight for issues regarding bail and pretrial detention. We continue to be concerned about sentencing issues and reforming there, that, in other words, incarceration should be the last resort. Probation should not be so long. There shouldn't be such onerous conditions on the probation as well. So we're also working and dealing with the sentencing issues. There are, and finally, let me just close before I open it up for questions, a couple of bills that you may all, I'm sure that you're probably aware of, but I just want to bring to your attention if you're not. The first one is the Raise the Age Bill, House Bill 272. This bill is being proposed and is pending in the legislature now, which would raise the age of juvenile court jurisdiction for nonviolent offenses from 17 years old to 18-year-old. So Georgia is only one of 3 states that if you are a 17-year-old and if you are accused of, let's say, a felony shoplifting, you are treated as an adult and you go to adult court. And so this bill seeks to raise that age of majority to at least 18. Other states have even higher age limits, some 20, 21. But again, Georgia is just one of 3 that treats 17-year-olds as adults. And we all know there are numerous health experts who have confirmed that the executive part of the brain is not fully developed until your mid-20s. This function regulates decision-making, planning, judgment, and impulse control. And a 17-year-old is a child and should be treated in juvenile court. And again, this bill, it doesn't affect those serious violent offenses. That is something that would still be in the adult court. So that's one bill that I'm very interested in and have been fighting for and hope that we see passed this year. The other one is actually a little smaller bill, but very important, and impacts so many people in Georgia, and it's House Bill 330. And this is basically would be a waiver for driver's license reinstatement fee. And the goal, as I see it, it really will help returning citizens and low-income Georgians get their driver's license reinstated. Right now, in order to get it reinstated, you have to pay a fine, I believe, or a fee of $100. And so we have so many people just stuck in this vicious cycle of they lose their license because they can't pay their ticket, and then they lose their job because they don't have a license. And the bottom line is license suspension, and what we have really criminalizes poverty, and it has nothing to do with whether this person is an unsafe driver. About 200,000 people in Georgia get their license suspended for being behind on child support payments or for missing a traffic court date. And if you are stopped for driving while your license is suspended, you're subjected to a $500 to $1,000 fine, and 2 days in jail, up to 12 months in jail. And we have about 50,000 Georgians who are arrested on this charge every year. So I think there's a lot of reform that needs to happen with driver's license suspension. But the first step that would certainly help is that waiving this fee for people to get their driver's license back. So that's a bill that's currently pending. And the final bill that I just wanted to mention to you, it's actually not a bill, it's a House Resolution 28. It proposes an amendment to the Constitution that removes a felony conviction as an exception to the right to register and vote. So it restores the voting privileges of many people who have that felony conviction or are serving a felony sentence. So I thank you all for inviting me. That's about all that I had that I wanted to talk about. But I'm happy to answer any kind of questions or get any suggestions or thoughts any of you might have.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? We want to again thank you, Ms. Claudia, for coming in and helping us out and educating us. Yes, give her a hand there. Are there any questions for Ms. Claudia? Please come off of mute if you're interested in talking.
Well, I'll start off with something. We did say we wanted to look at. I know it's completely different now with the COVID situation, and probably the money bail is not. I mean, it's really. We were talking just before we started that I know somebody who has been accused of a felony, and so he's having trouble finding his way out. But do you have anything in terms of you know, how we could have fewer people sitting in jail besides what you've talked about with the young people, things that you maybe would like our support in talking with others in the system, or you know, I know you gave us.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to, is really talking with the prosecutors, talking with the judges. They are certainly the ones that will, you know, prosecutors recommend, make recommendations regarding bonds. And the judges are the ones who actually set it. And have the authority to release somebody on a signature bond or not. So we continue to advocate that there's absolutely no difference if you have a $3,000 bond, that a person with money who can pay that $3,000 bond is not any more dangerous than someone who doesn't have the money. So if you're willing to give a $3,000 bond, why aren't you willing to give a signature bond? So it's, I think you know, the conversations need to be had, you know, with the prosecutors as well as with the judges to bring and share your concerns about people languishing in jail. We've done for, you know, for the most part, many of the people in the DeKalb jail, we've been able to keep the jail population down somewhat. It fluctuates every now and then, but a lot of them are charged with more violent offenses or accused of a violent offense. And those are the cases that I think judges and prosecutors are unwilling to give a signature bond in that instance.
All right, that's very good. Any other questions on the horizon? Or Bert, were you satisfied with that one?
Well, maybe just a quick follow-up. I know we wanted to do some following up, you know, as far as how effective what happened in 2018 was, and we got a little bit of data, but have you worked at all with the sheriff on, you know, getting information on how you know, how many people are being held in jail? It seemed like, you know, we could get some routine information that would help us have a better idea whether they are doing the best they can to keep people out who don't need to be there.
Yeah, and Bert, 2020, as I mentioned, it's kind of an anomaly because we are not seeing that many misdemeanor clients being in jail because of this expansion of the order mandating more signature bonds. I think what will be interesting and what I don't have the data on, but I think would be really interested to see is, has crime increased? You know, and that would be probably a police data, I would think. You know, that if all these misdemeanor people who were arrested were receiving immediately signature bonds, did they, you know, did they go back out and get arrested for another crime? We may not, my office may not be seeing them. If they're arrested and they're immediately given a signature bond, then we would not see them until they contact our office and request representation, or there's an actual court date scheduled. So I don't have those particular numbers, but I would think the police would. So I think part of the argument that we might have for more pretrial or bond bail reform is that granting somebody a signature bond does not increase or hurt public safety or increase crime. So that may be more of arrest records.
All right. We have to look into who we can work with to get those records. I think Karen had a question. Karen?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your wonderful presentation. So I wanted to follow up on the bail, money bail question around, in other words, after the pandemic is over, how do we keep, if assuming that the records are showing that the people who've been released on signature bond are not returning, are not committing further crimes and not missing their court dates and so forth. How can we keep that policy going after the pandemic? Who should we talk to or advocate with to keep that going?
Yeah, and once again, that's going to be the prosecutors and the judges. And I think having that data is helpful, right? To show them, you know, that it's not going to be any worse. It's not going to happen again. And so I think having kind of that data-driven argument can be helpful. I know that's something that I'm going to be using in trying to find when I work systemically with the judges and the prosecutors, is trying to collect that information and trying to keep this same thing exactly, this bail reform going. And I forgot an important thing to mention to all of you too regarding the bail. My office has collaborated with an organization, a nonprofit organization called the Bail Project. And they are coming in and they are actually bailing out some of our clients whose bond is low, several thousand, but our client is just too poor and does not have the money to afford that. And we cannot convince a judge to grant the signature bond. You know, we've had multiple hearings and we're just not there. And so we began collaborating with them at the end of 2020. And I think a rough estimate so far is they might have bailed out about 25 of our clients so far. So I'm real excited about that partnership and that collaboration as well too. But yeah, Karen, I think the data, it's just pointing out to the data, getting the data and just sharing that, you know, with the decision makers.
Awesome. Does that satisfy Karen? She's saying yes. Any other questions for Ms. Claudia?
Yes, I have one. My name is Adrian. Thank you so much, Claudia, for your presentation. I was interested in the school justice partnership. I haven't been in the school system for quite some time, but I do recall there being resource officers. Would they be the conduit to something like that? Or is there some other structure that school systems currently have that would welcome this approach?
Well, you know, I think it has to come from the leadership first. So, you know, I think we need to get the leadership support from the school districts involved in this. I think the SROs, they will certainly and should be at the table, you know, since they're frequently, obviously, will be the point of contact with the child. But I'm starting with leadership. That if the leadership supports this initiative, then everything kind of will trickle down to the rest of the people in the school that are employed with the school. But I think our first buy-in's got to be with the leadership.
Claudia, you were cutting out just a little bit there toward the end. Not sure if we were able to hear all of it, but please repeat just a little bit of what you said.
Sure.
After leadership.
Yes, I was saying that I believe that we have to get the leadership involved first, because once you get the leadership support, then everything else hopefully will impact the culture of the schools, and the other people will get on board and support this particular initiative. I think the SROs do need to be at the table, since they will be probably a point of contact with the child. But I do think just overall, when we're looking at the school systems, I think we do need to ask ourselves the questions about SROs. You know, do we have more SROs than we have school counselors or social workers or nurses? And so I think it's an important question to ask and something to examine a little bit more deeply as we get into what I hope will be the school justice partnership in DeKalb County.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Any other questions for Ms. Claudia today?
Hi, I'm Barbara Marin, and this is absolutely fascinating to me. I was particularly struck by the data about the 53% reduction in delinquency, because I mean, this is a natural experiment that's happened this last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's remarkable. I'm wondering if that's information that school boards need to have so that they can look at what was the reduction in their school district.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yes.
Because I think there's that it could be a real call to look differently at how they've been approaching the security situation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Barbara, and thank you for that point. My office coordinator is actually on the school board of Clayton County. So I have shared with her what DeKalb County data reveals, and I know that she's looking at that more in Clayton County as well. So yeah, I think it's an important data point for every school district to take a look at. Although some, you know, a lot of the school districts in the state of Georgia did a hybrid, and, you know, DeKalb, Clayton, I think they're the last two school districts that are all virtual. So we have more data, I think, showing all virtual school and no in person.
The follow-up to that was would that you were just speaking of be broken down into counties, I mean zip codes, not just a county?
I don't know. That's a great question, and I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if that data exists, but that's an excellent question. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm making a note of it to see.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions for Ms. Claudia?
I put one in the chat box. It should be quick. I was curious of the other two states where 17-year-olds can be tried as an adult.
Wow, I don't think, hold on, let me check.
Okay, you can come back with that. I just thought you might have known off the fly. I was just curious.
No, I don't know. I don't know no, I'm sorry, I don't. I'd have to check in my file.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of them is Alabama.
I figured they might be southern states.
There's Alabama.
Probably.
I know Alabama is one because I know of a child that was done like that, 9 years old. So.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I'll do some searching. Thank you.
Plus I'm from Alabama, so.
Well, since I have one other quick question, the funding for the bail project, where does that come from?
So they are a nonprofit, and the funding, they raise the funds. And so what happens is, the way that it works is that and this is the bail project you're talking about, that they will actually bail out some of our clients. If that's
Yes.
what you're
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, so they've raised the funds and then they will bail a client out. And then when that client's case is completed, they get that bail money back, which allows them to then bail out another person. So it's not a never ending, it's not an infinite number or amount of money that they have. But for right now, we're just keeping the referrals going and they haven't told us to stop the referrals. So until we hear from them, we'll keep on referring clients.
Very good, very good. All right, thank you again, Miss Claudia. It looks like we're not sure if anybody else has anything else to ask for Miss Claudia, but again, we want to thank you for your time and for bringing all the information that you have to us. Bert, was there a hand or something that you had?
No, I was just gonna say thanks, and I'm sure we can be in communication and if we have other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for the important work and the advocacy that you do. I appreciate you all so very much. And thanks again for allowing me to speak with you tonight.
Yes, ma'am. It was our pleasure. Again, take care now.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.